The knock came at exactly 7:15 on a Tuesday evening, and I already knew from the tone of it something was terribly wrong. A stranger in a cheap suit stood on my porch holding an envelope, telling me I was being accused of missing child support. My daughter Ivy was upstairs quietly finishing her homework, completely unaware that her own mother had just accused me of abandoning her. I stood there in my own doorway holding those papers, my hands shaking, wondering how Nadine could ever say something so untrue. My name is Weston Cole. I am 42 years old, and I work as a carpenter here in quiet Pine Hollow, Vermont. Pine Hollow is the kind of small town where everyone waves from their porch, and news travels faster than the morning mail truck. I build cabinets and porches for a living, working with my own two hands the same way my father once taught me. Nadine and I were married for 11 years before things slowly came apart, not from one single betrayal but from quiet distance. She wanted a bigger life than Pine Hollow could offer her, and somewhere along the way I stopped feeling like I was enough. When she finally left, she took a small apartment 2 towns over, and Ivy started splitting her weeks between 2 different homes. Every single month, without ever missing one payment, I transferred her child support straight from my account the day it was due. I kept every single receipt in a folder in my kitchen drawer, right next to Ivy's old drawings and her school photographs. So when that envelope arrived saying I had missed payments for 4 straight months, I honestly did not know what to think. Every night that week, I sat at my kitchen table with grilled cheese going cold, staring at those papers until midnight came. Ivy would come downstairs in her worn pajamas, ask if everything was okay, and I would tell her yes, just adult things. Researchers who carefully study custody disputes have found that false claims happen more often than most people would ever realize during separations. I did not know that fact back then. I only knew I felt sick, ashamed, and completely powerless against my own daughter's mother. But I still had one important thing that Nadine never once expected: every single bank statement quietly sitting in a manila folder. Down the street from my little blue house lived Louisa Marsh, a quiet, gentle woman who ran the bakery on Main Street. Louisa had lost her husband 3 long winters earlier, and somehow she always seemed to know exactly when I needed company most. She would leave a warm loaf of bread on my porch some mornings, never asking for anything, never expecting a single thing back. We had started having coffee together most Sunday mornings, sitting quietly on my porch while Ivy rode her bike up the street. Louisa never once rushed me toward anything. She simply showed up, week after week, steady as the seasons changing outside my window. When the papers arrived accusing me of missing payments, Louisa was the very first person that I called, hands still trembling badly. She came right over with a pot of coffee, sat beside me at the table, and simply asked me to breathe slowly. We agreed to gather every single bank record together before the hearing, laying each statement out across my kitchen table very carefully. The county courthouse hearing was set for a cold Thursday morning, and Nadine arrived that day wearing a confidence I had not expected. She stood up in that courtroom and told the judge I had abandoned my responsibilities, missed payments, and left our daughter struggling. Then she turned toward Louisa, sitting quietly behind me, and said loudly that some men only look reliable next to someone plain. A hush fell across that small courtroom, and I felt my face go hot with embarrassment for Louisa sitting right beside me. But Louisa simply smiled gently at Nadine, calm and steady, and said she was not interested in being anyone's comparison or competition. She said it quietly that hurting other people rarely fixes whatever is actually broken inside a person who never got to heal. Nadine went quiet for a long moment, her confident expression cracking just slightly before the judge asked her to please continue speaking. My lawyer stood up next and calmly placed 24 months of bank statements directly onto the table in front of everyone. Every single payment was right there, dated and confirmed, transferred right on schedule the same week each and every month for years. The judge quietly reviewed every single page, occasionally glancing up at Nadine, whose confidence had completely drained from her face by then. I did not smile, I did not gloat. I simply sat there holding Louisa's hand under the edge of the table quietly. The judge dismissed the claim entirely, noting there was absolutely no evidence at all of any missed payment in the record shown. Outside on the courthouse steps afterward, Nadine would not look at me at all, standing alone while everyone quietly walked past her. I could have walked away right then and let her stand there in that shame she had built for herself completely alone. Instead, I walked over and quietly asked if she was okay, because some old part of me still cared what happened to her. Nadine looked up at me with tired eyes and admitted quietly that she had been struggling with money and felt embarrassed asking. She said the accusation had felt easier than admitting she needed help, and I understood that kind of shame more than most. I told her I forgave her, not because what she did was okay, but because carrying anger would only hurt Ivy eventually. That evening, Louisa and I sat on my porch swing while Ivy slept upstairs, the autumn air smelling faintly like cut wood. I finally told her I was scared, that loving someone again felt like standing at the edge of something I might not survive. Louisa took my hand gently and said real love was not a leap at all, it was simply showing up every single day. She said she was not asking me to promise forever, only to keep showing up tomorrow, and then the day after that. I asked her if she was afraid too after losing her husband so suddenly, and she quietly admitted that she was terrified. But she said fear had never once stopped her from baking bread every morning, and it was not going to stop this either. We sat there quietly for a very long while, just listening to the crickets and the porch swing creaking softly beneath us. Then Louisa leaned her head gently against my shoulder and said maybe we had both been waiting long enough for this exact moment. I kissed her softly under that porch light, feeling something settle in my chest that had been unsettled for years and years. In the weeks after the hearing, Nadine reached out asking if we could talk honestly about how things had gotten so bad. We met for coffee at a small diner outside of town, just the two of us, without lawyers or papers between us anymore. She apologized for what she had said in that courtroom, admitting she had been jealous of how peaceful my new life looked. I told her that peace was not something handed to me, I had simply chosen it slowly, one quiet morning at a time. We agreed to focus only on Ivy from that point forward, splitting holidays fairly and never again pulling her into our conflict. It was not a fairy tale ending between us, but it was honest, and honest felt like more than enough for both of us. Louisa and I kept having our quiet Sunday coffee, and slowly those mornings turned into dinners, and dinners turned into something steady. One quiet spring evening, right there on that same porch, I finally got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. Ivy came running out in her pajamas, shouting yes before Louisa even had the chance to answer for herself at all that night. We were married the following October in the backyard, under the same maple tree where Ivy had learned to ride her bike. Nadine came to the wedding too, sitting quietly near the back, and afterward she hugged Louisa and wished us both well sincerely. It was not the ending any of us had expected years earlier, but somehow it felt like exactly the right one for everyone. 2 years later, Ivy started calling Louisa by a gentle nickname all her own, and our little house finally felt completely whole. Some evenings I still find those old bank statements tucked away in that same kitchen drawer, and I smile instead of hurting. They remind me that truth does not need to be loud, it simply needs to be steady, patient, and completely undeniable eventually. Louisa still leaves warm bread on the porch some mornings, only now she never has to leave, because she is already home. Real love, I have learned, is not one grand gesture, it is grilled cheese on a Tuesday and showing up the next morning. You can choose kindness even toward the people who once hurt you deeply, without ever pretending that the hurt did not happen. Forgiveness, I finally found out, was never really for Nadine at all. It was the quiet gift I gave to myself completely. These days our porch is full most evenings, Ivy doing homework, Louisa humming softly in the kitchen, and me finally at peace. If you are carrying an old hurt right now, I hope you remember that showing up quietly can outlast almost any storm. Some mornings I stand on that same porch with my coffee and watch Louisa walk up the street from her bakery smiling. Ivy is 12 now, taller every single time I turn around, and she still asks Louisa to braid her hair some mornings. We are not a perfect family, but we are a steady one, and steady turned out to be exactly what we needed. If there is one thing I would want anyone watching this to carry with them, it is that second chances are always possible. You can choose grace over bitterness, and you can build something steady out of the exact same pieces that once broke you. Thank you so much for spending your time with Heartline Stories Truth. Subscribe now for more stories about family, healing, and second chances.